Hi, everyone. You're listening to ToRAISE Questions Doula podcast. I'm Thérèse Hakun, and I'm Executive Director of ToLabor, which is an international training and certifying organization for birth doulas. Well, here I am once again in the studio. It's a beautiful, unexpected spring-like day here in Richmond, Virginia, which it's always nice to have these days. A little hard when it gets really cold again, which it will, but it's just, I'll take the warmth for a while. It makes walking places so much more enjoyable. I spend a lot of my time walking to anywhere I can possibly go to without having to use a car. I either ride my bike or walk, and in the winter, it always makes it a little bit more difficult to want to get out there and do that and not just use my car. But I really do limit it to places where I know I can't get to either safely or in a real timely fashion, or I have too many things to carry with me. So even in the winter, I challenge myself to go out there, and I actually end up loving it because I'm not a person who likes cold weather. So it is a good exercise for me. So today I want to once again thank you all for listening to this podcast. We are now actually, this is our 100th episode, which is kind of amazing to me because I remember when Sarah and I started this kind of spontaneously, or I guess it evolved organically. We had been doing ToRAISE Questions phone-ins for a good while, and they were successful, and then we were given the opportunity to have podcasting equipment, and we decided to do it not knowing how long it would last or where it would take us. But I have to say it's been a great journey, and though Sarah's not with me in this podcasting venue any longer, and I have had the wonderful experience of being with Melanie, though again, ironically on the 100th episode here I am by myself. Sarah is still very much a part of my life, but also helps still consult with ToLabor, even though she no longer does actual birth work. And of course we all have fallen in love with Melanie as well, but here I am by myself, celebrating with a cup of tea, and wanted to really extend, like I said, a thank you to all of you, because without your listening, we wouldn't be doing this. We get wonderful feedback and always great information, we feel, for ourselves by our guests or the questions that are asked of us to discuss. So love doing this and love having the positive feedback from all of you. So make sure, I've been told to make sure that you subscribe to iTunes, to the podcast. That helps with our visibility, and also to review us when you can actually on iTunes itself. It helps us a lot. As far as, again, visibility. We want to thank Latch Mama for all the support that they give us so that this podcast can happen, and for the donations that people still continue to send in to us. And so I'll just put a plug out there. Any form of donation that you would like to give to us, there is a place on our website in the podcast section where you will find a donate button, and this really helps offset the costs of producing this, editing it, and hosting it. Otherwise, we are just doing this as a free service to everyone, but any donations, as you know, can be really helpful. So today we will be having a guest. We'll be speaking with a doula, and I really look forward to hearing her experience, and she will share some birth stories, some birth scenarios that she has gone through, just as a great way for us to continue to learn. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Episode 100, Main Body. So, hi everyone, we're back and we're here today with Anne, who is from Indiana. She is a practicing certified doula with ToLabor, and she's going to have a conversation with us. So, hey Anne, how are you?
Good. Hi, Thérèse. Good to talk to you.
You too. I'm really glad that you're able to take some time out of, I know, a busy life to be able to talk with us. But so I think, just to get started before we go into a conversation about birth in particular, can you give us some background, give the audience some background about who you are, like how you decided to become a doula, how long has it been, any other stuff you want to put in about family, other work, whatever.
Yeah, sure. I would love to. Thank you. Let's see. So I have been, I always say I've been a doula for, I guess now it's going on 6 years, but I did my doula training 8 years ago. So I did my training with you in 2009. Really the way I came to that training and to wanting to be a doula is somewhat mysterious to me. I had an interest in women's health always very interested in, our women's reproductive health and rights and all of that stuff. And I was in my mid-20s and living in a big city and working as a fundraiser and really didn't like my work life at all. And then I had a friend who got pregnant, and I was so fascinated with, obviously I was excited about the baby, but, so fascinated with her and her choices and what she was going through. And so, at some point in her pregnancy, she was just like, do you know about doulas? Because I really think you need to look into this. So that was really cool to just have that sort of presented, like, I think you would like this.
That's
and
great.
I remember I did a little Google search and saw a couple different organizations, but then I saw ToLabor, which at the time was still Alice.
Right.
And I saw that you were coming to my city and hadn't been there for a while. And I just felt like, well, this must be the right thing. And I just sort of signed up, like didn't think about it too much and just signed up. And then I came home from the first night of the training and told my partner, like, okay, this is it. Like, this is what I'm going to be doing. I have to figure this out, like how this is going to happen. That's going to be what happens now.
Wow.
So so I did. I took the training. I don't have kids still. I did not have kids then, and I still don't. My wife, at the time, we were not married, but my partner was really, really supportive because she could tell, I think, how passionate and excited I was and how it felt like it brought together, all these things that I cared so much about. So after my doula training, I was trying to figure out, I think like most people do, like how am I going to do this, right? How do I transition my work? How am I going to support myself and my family?
Right.
And I had met a woman at that doula training who was a licensed massage therapist. And so I had a couple conversations with her, and that was something else that had been on my radar at different points in time. And she made it sound really great. And so then similarly, I just signed up to start massage school. So that's part of a 2-year break between the doula training and becoming a practicing doula. I went to massage school and got licensed, and then started doing massage and being a doula basically at the same time, like in the same couple of months. Both those things started.
Wow. So attending the training, I mean, that woman, your friend, saying, why don't you look into becoming a doula, or you ought to look into being a doula, was the beginning point. Going to the workshop, one day of it, you're feeling that, okay, this is what I need to do. But not only that, you're changing your life in that big way. Then you, as a result of that workshop, just because you met that person, though, like you said, it was on your radar, it was like the catalyst, you decided to go to massage therapy school. So you were just at the right time in your life for change, obviously, or very open to the idea. I mean,
I think I was having a quarter life crisis, and it all just fell together. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and so then you started attending births.
Yeah. So in the fall of 2011, I had my first client hire me. She had reached out to another massage therapist who was a doula. that's what she wanted. She wanted somebody who was a massage therapist and a doula, and that doula was not able to work with her, and so she referred her to me. And yeah, I had that client, and then a couple of months later, somebody else hired me, and it just kind of went off from there. And it definitely was, at the beginning of my career, I definitely did more massage than I did doula work in terms of how I was supporting myself. But just in the last probably year now, for sure, the birth work part of my work is a way bigger focus than massage at this point. So it has definitely shifted.
And so, I know that you moved from your large city to where you live now. Was that transition difficult, leaving what was familiar to you, I would assume? Because this is a question that a lot of doulas have, like, well, how is it, how do you make connections? We just had this question from someone recently, being new into the town, how do you connect with the already established birth group, or if there isn't one, how do you begin to establish? And I'm not sure which it was for you when you came to your new community.
Yeah, when I moved, you're right, just about 2 years ago from a big city on the East Coast to, this sort of Midwestern, small to mid-sized town or city. And yeah, so when I moved here, I did know, I just happened to have known from like way back in my past, one person who was a practicing doula here. And she was pretty experienced and, tied into other people who also were doing birth work in our city. And then, I don't know, for me, I was very nervous about that move, and I did feel like I really understood, not just the other doulas and childbirth educators and all of that where I was before, but, it takes that, you take that time to get to know, like, the providers and the hospitals and the out-of-hospital, who is out there, who can clients go to, right?
Right.
And so I was worried about sort of learning all of that stuff from scratch. But then when I got here, one thing that I noticed is because it was a smaller area, there were fewer of all of the things. So it was a little bit easier to wrap your head around. And for me, it actually ended up feeling less intimidating to get to know other doulas, other childbirth educators, because there's not a ton of us here.
And how did you find them?
How did I do that?
Yeah.
I think I started with Google searches, just, who, like, doulas in our city. And then from there, just, I'm trying to think back. I know I emailed or reached out to a couple of specific people who, from their website, I felt like, I might like this person. We might like to be friends. And just sort of, had coffee with some different people. And then there were things like we had a birth network chapter here, so I just started going to those meetings. I think I went to a couple of the ICANN meetings, International Cesarean Awareness Network. I just looked for those sorts of networking, but also learning opportunities, and just it's like if you keep showing up to things, you keep seeing people, and you at some point, it's not like you're the new person. It's like, this is another person we all know. Right.
And
that was big.
A concern that people have had or actually experienced, and so you can or can't answer this. Did you find some people were resistant to the fact that you were this new person coming in, and you felt like they didn't want to communicate with you, not because they didn't like you, but saw you as competition?
I don't really feel that I had that experience here.
Okay.
I think, I don't know exactly what that's about. I know what you mean. And I do know that there are other people in this community that feel that way. I think it might have been a little bit different for me because when I moved here, I was wasn't super, super experienced, but I think I had done about 30 births at that point.
Right.
Which in our community, one thing that has been true is that we have a lot of very experienced doulas who have, attended hundreds of births. And then we have a lot of brand new doulas, but we actually don't at the current time have very many doulas that are in that sort of middle, you're a little more seasoned. It's, it's not that everything is new still, but you still, you're still sort of gaining new experiences all the time.
Right.
So I think that, the more established people, it felt like, okay, this person's serious about this and,
Gotcha.
is going to stick around. But then also, I think that had something to do with it.
Which is hard, though, for the new person who comes in, who wants to be that person. And I'm glad that you didn't experience that. And maybe it was because of just who you are. Maybe it was you were oblivious to it. Maybe it was
that could be true.
what you're saying, that you were kind of, you had experience already and you've been doing it for a few years. But I do know from other doulas and other communities that they have run up against the wall. And my input, which I would assume is just the right input for anyone, would be, don't let that stop you. Just, just then get your name out there in other ways. If you're not finding the connection, then it is your responsibility to, get that business card and make sure it's everywhere, to make sure that you are creating some kind of internet presence with people and, networking and collaborating with other healthcare providers. And then you're just establishing yourself, period. And
absolutely.
You just put your head down and do it. And you're aware of your community and don't want to interrupt it in a negative way, but you can't go there also into the competition aspect of it, the negative competition aspect of it.
Exactly. That's what I was just going to say, because I think the thing is, and it's funny that you said, like, maybe you were just oblivious to it. It was like, that could totally be true. Because I think that part of it is that I came in and, I mentioned, so I'm married to a woman, right? So I'm in a part of the country that is not super progressive or liberal. It's a little more conservative area. And so I knew from the get-go that there were going to be people who I was just given that I was not going to be the right doula for them.
Right.
And I think that was part of my attitude going into meetings, is that I'm not necessarily trying to, or really at all trying to compete for clients with a lot of the established doulas in town. A lot of the birth community in town is, it feels weird. I don't know how to say this exactly. It's maybe a little more conservative or a little bit more mainstream, which I have total respect for, but isn't me.
I think that you came, I will just say, I don't take that as, I hope nobody else does either, take that as a criticism or a negative. It's more like you're describing, these are who these people are. And you stand out from that, in not just because of having a wife, but just because of who you are, whatever else your values and ethics are.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. And I think that's the thing, is that when people could tell, like, okay, I want to work with people that maybe some of my colleagues in the city don't want to work with, and things
vice
like that.
versa,
it's like,
maybe.
Exactly. Like, we're not, we truly are not competing. And I think that is, and I have some wonderful doula colleagues here who are also really liberal, and who we do share a lot of the same, sort of target market, or, whatever, that type of thing. But still, it's like, how many births can one doula do in a month? I don't live in a town of 500 people. Like, there's more than enough births to go around.
Right. And
so I think having that helps as well. Not sort of, not coming at it with this attitude of, like, I gotta, I don't have a scarcity attitude about my birth clients.
That's good. And that's, that is the message probably to all of us, period. Don't have that scarcity mentality about anything. But that is really wise input. Sometimes, and I don't know whether you've experienced this or not, I would imagine at times, since you've been doing this actively for 4 years now, or 6 years? What did you
say? A little over 5.
5.
Yeah, since 2011.
Yeah. That you might have had ebbs and flows in your clientele, like book, and then like quiet and slow month. And
absolutely.
Or months. And we can all get afraid of that. Like, oh God, God, is that a problem? And I like your message. Don't get into that scarcity mode of thinking because it doesn't serve. It can motivate you to make sure you're doing all the right things, to make sure your name is out there. But so being in your new community, I believe that you started establishing yourself in other birth work as well. Did you become a childbirth educator?
Yeah, that's right. So last year I became a Lamont certified childbirth educator.
Okay.
And right before that, I also became a certified lactation counselor as well. So in the past, little over a year, I've been doing those 2 things.
That's good. And do you do placenta encapsulation as well?
I don't. No.
Okay, you don't. So you have childbirth education. You can do the lactation counseling, the doula work, and the massage work.
That's right.
Okay, so here's the next question, and which is, the very, very typical question of at every workshop, and you've been to a few. How do you manage those jobs and being on call as a doula? Because you're self-employed, I'm assuming, right?
Totally.
Yeah, totally. In all ways. So how does it work for you if you have a birth and you're supposed to be teaching a childbirth class, or you have a birth and you're supposed to be with a massage person, or vice versa? You're doing a massage and your client needs you. Yeah.
So I think part of it is just, so it starts with being for myself very clear on what my priorities are, right? And so I tell everyone who does anything that's scheduled with me that we can reschedule all of this stuff, but I can't reschedule, and nobody can reschedule a birth, right? When a baby is ready to come, a baby is ready to come, and that's going to be my first priority. Luckily, because even in my massage work, I mostly work with prenatal and postpartum clients. Everyone understands that.
That's
and,
great.
There's many people
helpful.
who do. It is very helpful. And there's many people who do multiple of those services with me. So, when I have a class, it's been a little over a year, and I've had one time that I had to cancel a class for a birth. But in that class, 2 or 3 of the 7 couples in that class were having me as their doula. And so I think it made them actually feel really good. Like, oh, she'll be there for us. If there's a class, she'll still be there for us.
That's good.
So that's a big part of it is I tell everyone, I don't want to overemphasize that. I don't want to, every time somebody schedules something with me, it's not like, I might be at it, because, I might always be at a birth. But people are clear with that, clear on that when I start.
So can I
start with them.
Yeah, can I clarify that with because we certainly have lots of massage therapists out there who are doulas as well, and maybe they figured this out too. But so but for those who haven't, or coming up to that thinking, well, I'd like to be a massage therapist, so if you have a brand new person who wants to get a massage from you, and they're setting up an appointment with you, and they're setting it up for this coming, Friday, and that somebody potentially could go into labor on that day or in the days ahead, what do you alert them to that right at that signing up, or how do you work it?
Yeah, so most of my clients that come to me new are either referrals from a previous client or somehow are finding me online. And so a huge number of people who even signing up for an appointment for the first time are doing that through my online scheduling system. So on my online scheduling system, there's a note that says, and this is the same, I have an online scheduler for doula interviews, and even there it says, because I'm a birth doula, I may occasionally have to cancel on you last minute, for a birth. This is how I'll get in touch with you. I will send you an email to let you know, and I will also text you. If it's the middle of the night, I won't send a text. I'll just email. So check in. And if somebody calls me on the phone and does that, or, and it's the first time. I usually do still say something similar to that, but everyone gets confirmation emails from my scheduling system, and that it says in there.
Says right there. Okay, so that's one way to handle it. Yeah, and then so I do know that has been the case for a lot of people with their massage practices. Childbirth educators, I've also heard and wondered if you've considered this, having a backup person for the childbirth education class.
Yeah. So when I had to cancel the one time I had to cancel a class, I had just a couple weeks beforehand talked to a newer doula in our town that I'm mentoring, and who is also becoming a childbirth educator. And we were meeting to talk about something else, and I sort of, almost as a throwaway, was like, we should talk soon about you backing me up for my classes as well, if you would be interested in that. She's like, oh yeah, let's talk about that. So just a few weeks later, I had to cancel a class, and it was the first class in the series. So that week between that first class and the next class, we sat down together and hashed it all out. So now I've got her, and there's, it still might be the case, because I could be at a birth and she could be at a birth, or, it could be a time when her kid is sick or something.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I will say that up until now, I had kind of been like, well, if we have to cancel, we have to cancel it. And then it, sort of when I actually had to do it, I was like, okay, but also,
right. Because
I know to add on or something like that.
Yeah. And I know Melanie, of course, Melanie of podcast Melanie, that is what she has come to do, is she has somebody, she's had a few people during her periods of time of teaching that she has taught how to teach her class, so that, matter of fact, I filled in for her one time while she was out of birth, and because she needed somebody to teach the class, and fortunately she hadn't taught me how to teach her class, but fortunately I knew how to teach her class.
Fortunately, you know how.
So that worked out.
It was her talk on the podcast. I mean, I have I'll totally admit that there's been times when I'll just go back and re-listen to that episode you did where you just sort of were talking to her about how she does her business, because I feel so I mean, really, it's very inspiring how she's worked it all out. And then it's like everything she does, plus she has 4 children. So I'm just always sort of like, I got to get her tips. I heard her talking on the podcast about having backup for classes. And that's been a new sort of focus for me. It's like, I want to make sure everybody's taken care of. So how do I make that happen?
And there's always, as you know, the option of you finish your class or you do your class, and then you have a backup for your doula client, and then you go retrieve them, which is the other alternative as well. So I'm assuming you have a backup doula.
I have several different backup doulas. Work with. And I in the past, I've always had one main backup doula who I just, I've been lucky to know a number of doulas who were at a similar level of experience as me, and who I just really liked. And, the kind of people where you would not only would I send you to, to a birth in my stead, but you would be my doula,
Right. That's good.
You're great. And I totally trust you.
That's who you want.
And right
as
now,
your backup.
Exactly. Right now, the last person I had that with, which actually this has happened to me every time. They always leave doula work to become nurse midwives. So I have my third backup doula partner in nurse midwifery school now. But I am working with a number of other doulas. Not to say that they're not all great as well. But
I know what you mean.
That I have more of a network now instead of that one person. Yeah.
Did you have an experience of, how I know that across the country many doulas are forming businesses together. Some are calling themselves agencies. Some are just partnerships, whatever the word is. Were you ever interested in that and not working in solo independent work yourself?
That's such a good question. So I have been all over the map internally about not just agencies, but, working with groups. When I very first became a doula in the city that I was in, almost all of the existing collectives or agencies or groups required you to have taken a DONA training. And so I think I sort of looked into joining one, but was sort of like, well, I'm not going to take another training right now, and felt good about. I mean, I've always wanted to be self-employed, and so it felt like, well, that's fine. I'm doing what I want to be doing. But like I said, when I first started doula work, I definitely, my births were very spaced out. I would do 7 in a year or something like that. And at some point I really wanted to be doing more birth work. And I looked into joining a collective again. And again, it was like at that point they were sort of, working with people from different, training organizations, but they were mostly wanting to bring people in who were at the beginning of their doula careers. And so then I was like, well, now I have like too much experience to join a lot of these groups. So when I moved to my new city, and especially around that time, 30 births or so of experience, I started sort of mentoring newer doulas and people who are looking to become doulas a little bit more.
Which is great.
And I always had to say, like, this is the way I did it, but if I had it to do over, I might really look into joining a group or an agency, because many doulas that I knew in my old city, I would meet them when they had just become, just on their training. We'd see each other at a continuing education workshop, and then I'd see them 6 months later and they had, twice as much experience as I did or whatever. Like, they just were getting a lot of clients really fast. Right. So I always had to sort of say, like, that might be something you might want to look into. So there was an opportunity for me to join an agency here in my new town when I'd been here about a year. And I did work with an agency. I think altogether we were contracted for about 5 or 6 months. And partly I joined them because their main childbirth educator was moving away. And so I was just starting childbirth education. And I taught a couple of series of classes for them, and, was available for doula work as well. And what I found for myself in that, it felt like I had always thought of it as being this thing where, oh, well, if I was with an agency, they would just be, bringing me work and I would just get to do the doula part,
Right.
But I found that that wasn't the case, at least in that setup. For whatever reason, that wasn't how it worked out. So I felt like I was ultimately still doing almost all the same amount of groundwork that I had been doing in terms of just, the networking and building relationships in the community and, still doing a lot of marketing and things like that, both for myself and for the agency as a whole. And so after a few months, sort of had a conversation with the agency owner and said, I think that it feels like to me, it would make more sense for me to go back to, sort of doing this on my own. And a little bit, there was like something around, sort of how I wanted to think about my target market and how they were thinking about their target market. But a lot of it was just me sort of realizing, like, well, I think I had built this up as to be one thing, and then it wasn't quite that. And it turns out that I really like just being in control of how it all works for myself.
So was that, I mean, honestly, 2 things.
Yeah.
I assume that you were being paid less money for each birth. Is that true?
That's true. Yeah. The agency did take a cut. We did work out we did work out a situation where it wasn't as much of a cut as I know that it can be in other areas of the country and with other agencies. But yes, there was a cut that was going to the agency.
So, and I don't want to make this all about money, but we're talking about money right now. So,
right, of course.
So, and this is a business, and we do want everyone to get the best that they can possibly get, given circumstances. But so what I'm hearing is you're making less money, but basically putting in, if not 100%, 75%, the same amount of work that you were doing when you were independent. So I could, is that correct?
Yeah. And I don't know that it had to be that way, but that it might partly be just that's how I am.
Right.
Around my work.
But and
yes, that was part of it.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whether that was a requirement or not, that was part of it. And so I could see myself also kind of figuring that out, like, well, what's the point of this if I'm, for the financial aspect of it. And I like also, Anne, that you were honest in saying, maybe control also, because I certainly, of anyone could relate to that, is that, you do like to do, some people, sometimes for me, it's so liberating when it's somebody else who's just saying, here, this is what I need you to do. And I'm like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Or like when I get to go to a workshop, which isn't very often, some kind of training of whatever kind it is, I just so love, people probably don't believe it, but I don't usually do a lot of talking because I'm so happy to just not have to be the facilitator. I'm just, it's such a nice feeling. But other times, yes, when it comes to many things, I like to do things the way I like to do things. So I just, sometimes it's better for me just to do it on my own. So you did try the agency work after all that, and it just, you found a better niche for you was just being solo and continuing to do it the way you've been doing it. And I think that's really legitimate and really, it used to be when these things were beginning, doula work was becoming more known. I mean, everybody was independent. I know, New York City might have bigger come together, maybe some large cities, but basically everybody else everywhere, we were doing it on our own. And if you had a partner, it was like, oh my God, I have a partner. And there's nothing wrong with, we figure those things out, but I do think it's interesting that you thought that was a potential opportunity, eventually had the opportunity, and in the end, you didn't go with that. It makes me think of, like, I had hospital birth, home births, which I'm really glad I had the hospital birth because it helps me understand hospital births on a personal level, personally, but not that I needed that, but also I have something to compare it to. Not that I needed that, but it's nice to have it. And
it's just nice to have. Yeah.
It's just nice to have.
And I feel that way. I really feel that way. I don't regret at all having had that period of time when I was working with an agency. Right. And I think, it's a good business, and they're doing really well, and that's so awesome. I'm really glad that they're here in our town. But I think one thing that what happened for me, honestly, doing it is that it gave me this sense of perspective of like, oh, I had more figured out than I knew that I had. That's
good.
And I think I felt like, well, I don't know what I'm doing. But then it was like, no, I do know what I'm doing.
That's good.
And it's working for me,
Well, good. So, sometimes that's what it takes to affirm ourselves, is to see how much we really did know that we were. Yeah. That's why I always tell people who have taken the workshop and then they start doing births to really consider taking the workshop again. Because you learn new things always, because there's always new things to learn. But what is so wonderful is you're listening with different ears this time, and you're realizing, oh, I do know this. Oh, I did know that. I did do that. And it's so affirming. It really is. Or it's like, oh, I'm so glad I'm remembering that again. But I think it's the affirmation that is so important to have in that way. So I will just put out that plug out there. Take the workshop again if you're one of the people listening who has done the workshop and are doing birth work. So, Anne, let's get to a story also that I'd like to ask you if you want to share one of your labors with us. And I think we talked about one that kind of was a surprise outcome. And I think those are always good to hear about. So I'm going to keep an eye on the time just so you won't get swamped by my
perfect.
But so give us a story.
So I'm excited to share this story with you. So I have had this experience not that long ago with a client who was planning a out-of-hospital birth. So we have 2 birth centers in our town, and both of them at each of the birth centers, the midwives who run them also do home birth. So patients have an option if they want to do home birth or birth center birth with them. And this particular client, she and her family had an RV. And so they kind of had decided that it's so cool. It's like, well, we want to have like our home birth, but at the birth center, so they got to sort of like bring their home to the birth center and do that. So that was this kind of cool setup that we had planned. And so let's see. So this client was having her second baby, and her first baby had been born in a hospital. Yes, in a hospital. She'd had a vaginal birth, and so she was planning the second one out of hospital. And she trying to think of where to begin with it. So her water had broke. Is that right? Let me think for just a second to bring back all the details. Yes, I believe that she texted me. I already know.
We chuckle. And for seasoned listeners, we know why she's chuckling, because I hate texting in labor stuff. But it's okay. Go right ahead, Anne.
No, I know.
Go right ahead.
I hate texting too, but it's part of
Go right ahead.
So she had texted me, I think around 2 in the morning, 2:30 in the morning, to say that her water had broke. She wasn't feeling contractions yet. And she's a very knowledgeable, woman about birth already. So she said, the contractions haven't started yet. I'm just letting you know. I'm going to rest, and I want you to rest. So let's all sleep, and I'll call you when things change. So I was like, okay, we'll do that. So then she called me a couple hours later, so around 4:30, I want to say, and she said that she had rested for about half an hour, and then contractions had started, and that she had noticed over the past hour and a half that they had really sort of taken off, gotten stronger and closer together, increasingly quickly, over time. And so she said that they were going to go ahead and drive over to the birth center, and could I meet them there? So I, jumped up and hopped in my car and got there. And when I got there, the birth center was not open. The midwife wasn't there yet, and they weren't there yet. And so I'm just, it's the middle of the night, and I'm sitting in my car. And like, what's going to happen?
So Anne is ready for the baby, but nobody else is there.
Exactly.
That's so funny.
Exactly. It's easy for me. I live close by, and I did not have to wrangle any children yet. So then they came in, or they drove up to the birth center probably 20 minutes later, and parked, and I got out of my car and walked over to their RV, and then nobody came out of the RV. And so I'm like, okay. So I knock on the door, and nobody answers. And I'm like, okay. So I go to, I think I had left my phone in the car, so I went to go get my phone and called them. And when I walked back over towards their RV again, I could hear her laboring, quite heavily from inside the RV. Right.
All right. So can I just ask a quick question that's probably not relevant, but do they live in an RV?
Yes, they do.
That's right. That's what you said at the very beginning. Right. I forgot. I'm so sorry.
No, totally. So I hear her laboring quite heavily, and I'm like, okay, like, how close is the midwife? Like, what's going on? So then I texted and said, I'm outside, and went to knock on the door again, and her husband came and let me in. And when I got into the RV with them, it was like very apparent to me that she was, definitely in transition. Like things had really moved along very, very quickly. I sort of said, okay, where are you planning to have this baby? Do you want to have this baby in your RV, or do you want to be in the birth center? Because in the birth center, they had the birth pool, which they had been considering using. And so I was like, how are you feeling right now? And she said, I think I want to go into the birth center. So I said, okay, so let me go. She was like, I want to put my shoes on and use the bathroom or something. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to pop out and go see if the midwife is here yet, or get the door open, or whatever we need to do. So luckily the midwife had come in and was in the birth center, like in those few minutes that I had been in the RV with them, and went into the birth center. And so I said to her, I'm going to be shocked if she's not, 9 centimeters or more. I really think this baby is about to come. I don't know if we have time for the birth pool, but like, I'm going to go help her in here, but I want you to know that's what's coming in. Like this is just letting you know what's up.
That's good.
So she sort of, started making sure everything was, that she had a place for her to lay down on the bed and be checked and all of those things. So I helped her come in, and she and her husband, or me and her husband helped her, walk out of the RV and up into the birth center and back into the room, where the midwife was all set up. And their 4-year-old was asleep and had slept through everything. So he was just sleeping in the RV, and, we set up the baby monitor. So the midwife goes to check her. And I have this habit that I've developed over the years of attending births where I just am like staring into the faces of the care providers when they're doing checks. And I don't know why I think that's going to give me any information other than just waiting for them to tell me.
No, but I think I do. That's interesting that you say that, Anne. I'm interjecting here. I do find I'm always watching their faces because, and I never thought about that. Of course, because I worked with one person in particular for so many years, I guess that's why I do it, is that I know what their face is going to tell me.
You knew
sometimes.
How to read her.
Yeah, I can do that, but maybe that's why it's transpired. I do that with other ones, but that's so interesting. I think you do.
Well, even if you don't,
yeah, you can see a something in their face, like, oh, is that head? Is that butt? Is that
exactly?
Is that the posterior? Or I think that's what we're looking for. We're kind of, or it's giving maybe you that moment of thinking, okay, that looks quizzical. I got to ask a question about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And sometimes too, I think it's like helping myself. It's like giving myself the extra couple of seconds of like, okay, is this, is it a situation where somebody's been laboring for hours and the face that I'm seeing is telling me that there's been no change?
Yeah.
How are we going to,
that's true.
Sort of mitigate that So
it's body language.
So I did that.
Reading.
Exactly, reading the book. Which, of course, when we say it that way, it's like, of course
I do that. You do that. That's what I was thinking. I know. I'm thinking that's what doulas do.
Yes. We read body language constantly. Yes. So I'm looking at her face, and I'm just like, okay, something crazy is happening. I wasn't sure. I could tell that she was. It's funny. Yeah, you said sort of like, what is that I'm feeling? I think that is what her face was. It was like, what exactly am I feeling? And so she's doing this check, and then she, she's finished, and she's taking off her gloves, and she gives herself a second, and then she says, okay, the good news is that you're fully dilated. But on the other hand, I am almost positive that this baby is breech.
Oh, boy. So, Anne, I think what I'd like to do, if you're okay with this, is pause here for the moment and end our conversation and pick it up again next week. Would that be okay with you?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I would like to be able to give enough time to go on and talk more without feeling like I have to rush you in any way. So, everyone, thanks for listening, and you'll hear the second part of this conversation next week, and I look forward to it. Thanks, Anne. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Well, thanks everyone for listening today. As I said, we're going to finish this conversation next week with Anne. I didn't want to rush her in any way. And so stay tuned, and we'll be talking next week with her as well. Hey, just a reminder to check out our website calendar for workshops that are coming up, and any interest you might have in potentially sponsoring, send a email to Nicole at tolaborworkshops@gmail.com, and any questions for us, please send to ToRAISE Questions@gmail.com. Yeah, and take care of yourself, and we'll be talking with you next week. Bye now.